Opening. My dear friends, have you ever noticed how our culture constantly whispers, more is better? More money, more possessions, more achievements, more recognition. We are told that happiness lives on the other side of accumulation, that the next purchase, the next milestone, the next upgrade will finally make us complete. And yet, if we are honest, so often, the more we collect, the heavier our hearts become. Instead of peace, we carry clutter. Instead of freedom, we carry weight. The Buddha once said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." In simple words, to know what is enough is to already live in joy. Imagine that for a moment. Happiness, not as something you chase endlessly, but as something you discover the instant you stop running. Isn't that a radical idea in our world today? Think about your own life. How many things do you own that you rarely, if ever, use? The clothes at the back of your closet, the gadgets gathering dust, the subscriptions you forget you even have. Each item once promised satisfaction, but now sits quietly, adding noise to your space and to your mind. Have you felt that? That quiet exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from owning too much. Minimalism, in the Buddhist spirit, is not about deprivation. It's not about stripping life bare until it feels colorless. It's about clearing the noise so that the essential can sing. It's about creating room for peace, for gratitude, for awareness, for the joy that doesn't depend on the next purchase, or the next paycheck. I remember speaking with a friend who had recently downsized his life. He sold most of his belongings, kept only what was useful or meaningful, and moved into a smaller home. At first, he feared he was losing comfort. But soon, he realized he had gained something greater: time, clarity, and a surprising lightness in his soul. He told me, "When I stopped chasing more, I finally felt like I had enough." Isn't that the kind of freedom so many of us are searching for? So today, I want to invite you to walk with me through 10 doors, 10 perspectives, on how a minimalist way of living can open the path to deeper serenity. This is not a lecture on rules. It's not about living with a certain number of objects, or following a strict lifestyle trend. It's an exploration of what happens when we live with intention, when we consume less, but experience more, when we trade the weight of excess for the breath of simplicity. And before we step further, I want to ask you this: what does enough look like for you? Not in theory, not in someone else's book, but in your actual life. Can you picture it? A life not defined by the next thing to buy, but by the peace of knowing you already have what matters most. Because in the end, minimalism is not really about the objects outside of us. It's about the space inside of us. When we stop filling every corner with more, the heart suddenly finds room to rest. And in that rest, there is joy. So let us begin this journey together, into a life of less consumption, and far more serenity. The empty room and the full heart. Have you ever walked into a room so simple, so bare, that instead of feeling poor or lacking, you felt strangely at ease? No clutter on the shelves, no piles of things screaming for attention, just space, silence, and light. And in that space, your own heart seemed to breathe a little deeper. There's a story about a young monk, a novice stepping for the first time into a meditation hut. The room was almost empty, just a straw mat, a wooden bowl, and a single oil lamp. At first, the boy was puzzled. He thought, how can anyone live here? Where's the comfort? Where are the things? But as he sat quietly, he began to notice something extraordinary. The silence became comforting. The emptiness began to glow. The less there was in the room, the more space there seemed to be in his heart. And that's the paradox of life we so often forget. We think filling our homes, our closets, our schedules will fill us. But sometimes, it only makes us heavy. It ties us down. It's as if every object comes with a string, and before we know it, we are tangled in a web of our own possessions. Have you ever felt that? Walking into your own house and instead of peace, you feel burdened by the mess, by the weight of too much, by the silent demand of things that need dusting, fixing, organizing. What if emptiness is not loss, but freedom? What if a room without distractions is the doorway to a heart that feels full? I've experienced this myself. A few years ago, I cleared out a small corner of my home and kept only a cushion, a candle, and a notebook. No decorations, no buzzing devices, no stacks of books waiting to be read. Just space. At first, I worried it would feel boring, but soon I discovered it became my favorite place. In that simplicity, I could breathe. My thoughts slowed down. Gratitude naturally arose. That little corner reminded me, peace isn't something you buy, it's something you make space for. The Buddha once taught, it is not great possessions that bring peace, but a heart free from clinging. Let that sink in. It's not the things we own that hold the key to happiness, it's how lightly we can hold them, or even let them go. So let me ask you, what is one small space in your life that could become your empty room? Maybe it's a corner of your bedroom. Maybe it's your phone screen, cleared of apps you don't really use. Maybe it's a quiet moment in your day with no music, no scrolling, no noise. Can you imagine how your heart might feel if you gave it just a little more space? We often think that a full room makes for a full life. But perhaps the opposite is true. An empty room, stripped of clutter, stripped of distraction, can remind us that fullness isn't out there, but in here. In the way we breathe, in the way we notice, in the way we can finally rest. The empty room is not empty at all. It is filled with stillness, with clarity, with the quiet kind of joy that doesn't depend on anything else. And that is why, sometimes, less is not less. Less is where peace begins. The second robe. Have you ever stood in front of a closet full of clothes and sighed, I have nothing to wear? It's such a common moment in modern life, staring at abundance, yet feeling dissatisfied. Somehow, the more choices we have, the more restless we become. There's an old story about a monk who lived with just 2 robes. One to wear, and one to wash. That's it. No endless options, no time wasted choosing. When one was drying, he simply wore the other. His energy was free for what truly mattered, practice, presence, compassion. The simplicity of 2 robes didn't make him feel poor. On the contrary, it gave him a kind of richness many of us long for, clarity. Now, compare that to our daily reality. Many of us have closets overflowing, yet choosing an outfit can take 15 minutes each morning. It's not just about clothes, it's about decision fatigue. Every small choice drains us, and by the end of the day, our minds are exhausted. Psychologists even have a name for this, decision fatigue. Studies show that the more trivial decisions we make, the less mental energy we have left for meaningful ones. So let me ask you, how many decisions in your day are truly essential, and how many are just noise? Do you really want to spend your energy picking between 20 shirts? Or would you rather save that energy for creativity, kindness, or solving real problems? I experienced this shift myself. A few years ago, I decided to simplify my wardrobe, neutral colors, fewer items, things I actually loved and wore often. At first, I worried I'd get bored. But what happened was surprising, my mornings became lighter. I didn't waste energy on what to wear. I didn't keep chasing new trends. I felt strangely free. And that freedom spilled over into other parts of my life, less clutter in my mind, less comparison with others, more space for calm. The Buddha taught that peace doesn't come from possessions, but from the absence of clinging. Having fewer robes, fewer shirts, fewer options isn't about denying joy, it's about removing friction. It's about freeing the mind from pointless chatter, so it can focus on wisdom. Think about it, Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck. Einstein was known for having multiples of the same suit. Why? Not because they lacked money, but because they understood that life's energy is precious. The less time spent on trivial choices, the more space there is for genius, for insight, for presence. So here's a gentle challenge for you. What would your second robe look like? Maybe it's simplifying your wardrobe. Maybe it's deleting apps you rarely use. Maybe it's reducing choices in one small corner of your life. Imagine how much mental space you could reclaim. Simplicity is not about wearing less or living with less for its own sake. It's about living with just enough so that your heart and mind can be full. A monk with 2 robes is not deprived. He is liberated from indecision, from excess, from distraction. And maybe that's what we are all searching for. A way to stop drowning in choices and start breathing in clarity. So the next time you open your closet and feel that familiar frustration, remember, it's not about adding more. Sometimes, freedom begins with less. The bowl that knows enough. A single bowl of rice can nourish the body, but no amount of greed can ever satisfy the heart. Isn't that an interesting truth? The body knows when it's full. But the mind, if left unchecked, always whispers for more. There's a beautiful image from the life of the Buddha. Each morning, he would walk through the villages with his alms bowl. He never demanded, never hoarded, never asked for more than what was needed. Whatever was placed into the bowl, he accepted with gratitude. Sometimes it was plenty. Sometimes it was barely enough. But always it was sufficient. And he reminded his disciples, one who knows where to stop, even with little, enjoys it deeply. One who is never satisfied, even with riches, feels poor. Now think about our own bowls. They may not be made of wood or clay, but we carry them in the form of bank accounts, shopping carts, and endless wish lists. How often do we fill them past the point of enough? How often do we keep reaching, even when we already have more than enough to live? Here's the paradox. Consuming less doesn't mean lacking, it often means finding contentment. I remember once deciding to cut back on eating out. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I wanted to reset my habits. For a month, I cooked simple meals at home. Rice, vegetables, a bit of soup. At first, it felt like sacrifice. But after a while, I noticed something. I savored each bite more. I felt gratitude for the ingredients, for the effort of preparing them. Meals became slower, richer, even sacred in a way. My bowl was smaller, but my appreciation was greater. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. The more we get, the faster we adapt, and the more we want again. It's why one raise at work is never enough. One new phone is quickly outdated. One success leads only to craving the next. Unless we learn to step off the treadmill, we run endlessly and never arrive. The teaching of the bowl that knows enough invites us to stop running. It whispers, your life may already be full, if only you could see it. Have you ever felt that, when a simple meal, a quiet moment, or a heartfelt conversation suddenly felt more nourishing than any luxury could provide? This doesn't mean we should reject comfort or beauty. It means we should learn to notice when we've crossed the line between need and excess. Because true abundance is not measured by the size of the bowl, but by the heart that receives what is placed in it. So let me ask you, what would it look like if your bowl was enough? If you stopped chasing one more thing, one more upgrade, one more possession? Would you feel deprived, or would you finally feel free? The Buddha's alms bowl was never about poverty, it was about freedom. Freedom from endless wanting, freedom from the weight of more. To consume less is not to live with less, it's to live with enough. And in that space of enough, the heart discovers joy. Sometimes the greatest luxury is not a feast, but the ability to look at a simple bowl of food and whisper, this is enough. The wind and the kite. Have you ever noticed how wealth can feel like the wind? The stronger it blows, the harder it becomes to stand still. At first, we may believe that having more is the key to flying higher, to reaching greater freedom. But what if the very thing we cling to most tightly is what holds us down, or even tears us apart? Let me share a story. Imagine someone collecting wealth and possessions, tying them one by one to a kite. A new house, another car, more jewelry, more gadgets. It's as if they keep adding more strings, thinking the kite will soar higher. But when the wind finally rises, the weight of all those strings doesn't lift the kite, it shreds it. The dream of flying free turns into a struggle just to stay in the air. Isn't life sometimes like that? We work tirelessly to accumulate more, convinced that security lies in numbers, in our bank accounts, in the square footage of our homes, in the amount of stuff filling our closets. Yet the more we hold, the more fragile we become. Like a kite tangled in its own lines, we risk being torn apart by the very things we thought would set us free. Here's the paradox. A kite doesn't fly when it's bound by too much. It flies when it has just enough string, carefully balanced, released with trust. The Buddha taught something similar. Freedom isn't about grasping at everything, but about knowing how to let go. To live simply doesn't mean to reject life, or to run away from responsibilities. It means to recognize what is enough, to release the excess that weighs on our spirit, and to discover the peace that comes with lightness. Think about this. When was the last time you felt truly free? Was it when you bought something new? Or was it in a quiet moment, when you felt no burden to prove anything to anyone, when your heart was light and uncluttered? Living minimally is not about the absence of joy, it is about creating space for joy to breathe. When we stop clutching at every possession, every dollar, every sign of status, we begin to notice the simple gifts that were always around us. A gentle breeze, laughter with a friend, the calm of a morning without rush. These are the winds that carry us, if only we loosen our grip. So, here is the teaching: possessions, like the wind, are powerful. They can lift you, or they can destroy you. The choice lies not in the wind itself, but in how you hold the string. A person who lives simply, who knows how to release instead of clutch, is like a kite given just the right amount of line. It rises with grace, it dances with the sky, it goes where the wind allows without fear. The truth is, freedom does not come from having it all. It comes from knowing what to let go. The song in the forest. Where does true joy come from? Is it born out of what we own, or from the depth of how we experience the present moment? There's a story of a young monk walking through the forest. He had no possessions, no instruments, no entertainment to distract him. One morning, as he paused to rest, a bird began to sing. Just a simple melody carried by the wind, yet something remarkable happened. The monk felt an overwhelming happiness rise within him. No money was involved, no performance, no grand stage. Just the pure sound of life itself, and his willingness to listen. Think about that for a moment. How often do we walk through our own lives without hearing the songs around us? We sit in cars with music blasting, scroll endlessly through playlists, buy expensive speakers, or chase the next concert ticket, yet we forget the simplest music, the hum of the morning, the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves outside our window. I remember once sitting in a park, feeling weighed down by worries. My mind was racing: work, bills, deadlines, plans. But then a robin landed nearby and began to sing. For a moment, I stopped. I truly listened. That small act of listening didn't solve my problems, but it shifted something inside me. The heaviness eased. I felt present. And isn't that the essence of peace? To realize that joy is not something we buy, but something we receive when we become still enough to notice. The Buddha often reminded his disciples, peace and happiness are not found in having more, but in being more aware. The young monk in the forest discovered this truth firsthand. His joy did not depend on adding possessions, but on awakening to the miracle that was already there. And here's the question for us. If happiness can be found in the song of a bird, what else are we missing in our rush to accumulate? How many sunrises have slipped by unseen? How many conversations half heard? How many gentle breezes ignored? simply because we were too busy chasing something else. Minimalist living is not about stripping life of joy, it's about clearing enough space to finally hear life's natural music. When our minds are cluttered with possessions, with endless wants, we become deaf to the quiet beauty around us. But when we simplify, when we slow down and truly notice, we find that joy has always been waiting, like a bird singing in the forest. So the teaching is this: happiness is not in adding more layers to life, but in peeling them back. It is not in collecting, but in perceiving. To be at peace is to see clearly, to hear deeply, and to live fully in this moment. That's when the forest sings. That's when the heart feels free. The child and the old toy. Do you remember when you were a child? Back then, it only took one simple toy to keep you happy for an entire day. A little ball, a doll with faded colors, or even just a stick found in the yard could spark hours of joy and imagination. And yet, as adults, many of us fill our homes with hundreds, even thousands, of things. Closets overflowing, shelves stacked, gadgets piled up. But here's the question: if more things are supposed to equal more happiness, why do we often feel emptier than ever? There's a story about a child who had a small, worn-out toy. Its paint was chipped, its edges frayed, but the child carried it everywhere. Why? Not because it was shiny or new, but because it held joy. It was a companion, a part of their play, a bridge to laughter. The toy didn't have to be perfect, it was the heart's connection that made it priceless. Isn't it the same for us, even now? Think of that one mug you always reach for in the morning, the one that feels just right in your hands, no matter how many fancy cups you own. Or that old sweater you keep wearing because it feels like comfort, even if it's not the most stylish. Those objects hold joy not because they are many, but because they are enough. I once met a man who had spent years collecting watches. He owned dozens, each one expensive, beautifully crafted. But when I asked him which one made him happiest, he smiled and pointed to an old, scratched watch his father gave him when he was young. That one meant more than all the rest combined. Why? Because joy is not about quantity, it's about meaning. The Buddha often reminded us, craving leads to suffering. No matter how much we add, the hunger for more never ends. But when we recognize the value of the simple and the meaningful, our hearts begin to rest. Happiness is not a warehouse of possessions, but a home for gratitude. So maybe the question we should ask ourselves is this: what are the old toys in our own lives, the few simple things that truly matter, that bring warmth to our hearts? And how much of our energy is being wasted chasing what never really fills us? Minimalist living is not about throwing away everything you own, it's about rediscovering the joy of the few things that already bring you life. It's about remembering, like the child with the old toy, that enough is enough. That one small thing, when loved and appreciated, can open the door to a happiness that 1,000 things never will. So the teaching is simple yet powerful: joy is not in the abundance of possessions, but in the depth of our connection to what is already here. The clear drop of water. Have you ever noticed how refreshing it feels to drink a glass of clean, cool water? It doesn't need to be a full jug, or a sparkling beverage with fancy packaging. Just a single glass of pure water can bring ease to both body and mind. Now imagine the opposite: a large jar filled with murky, muddy water. There may be more of it, but would you dare to drink it? This simple image holds a deep truth about the way we live. Many of us chase after more possessions, more success, more recognition, believing that quantity will quench our thirst for happiness. But like drinking from a jar of dirty water, the more we consume, the more restless and unsatisfied we often feel. There's an old story of a monk who carried only a small bowl with him. Each day, he would receive just enough food and just enough water to sustain his body. When someone asked him, "Don't you wish you had more?" he smiled and replied, "Why long for more when I already have what is pure and sufficient?" His happiness was not tied to abundance, but to clarity, like a single glass of clean water that refreshes the soul. Think about your own life. How many of the things we run after are like that jar of muddy water, plenty in volume, but heavy with dissatisfaction? And how often do we overlook the small, simple things, a meal shared in silence, a walk in the evening air, a few heartfelt words from someone we love, that bring us the true refreshment of life? I once heard a friend say, "The more I bought, the thirstier I felt." It struck me, because isn't that what modern life often feels like? A constant thirst that no amount of more can ever quench. And yet, when she began to live more simply, choosing fewer, better, and more meaningful things, her sense of peace returned. It wasn't about having everything, but about appreciating the clear drops already in her cup. The Buddha put it beautifully: the wise live simply, finding joy in purity, that is the greatest wealth. True wealth, then, is not measured by how much we store up, but by the clarity and sufficiency of what we already have. So here's a question worth asking ourselves. Are we drinking from muddy jars of endless craving, or are we content with the clear water of simplicity? Which truly satisfies? Minimalist living is not about rejecting life's gifts, it's about choosing the clean over the polluted, the enough over the endless chase. Just as one glass of clear water can cool an entire body, a heart that knows contentment can bring peace to an entire life. The temple bell. Have you ever noticed how one single sound can bring your whole being to stillness? Imagine a temple at dawn. The air is cool, the sky still dim, and then, dawn, a bell rings. Just one note, but it carries across the courtyard, echoing into the trees, reaching every corner of the monastery. And as it rings, the monks pause, sit quietly, and breathe. In that moment, nothing else is needed. The bell doesn't compete with the noise of the world. It doesn't need to be loud, or long, or complicated. Just a single sound, clear, pure, has the power to settle a restless mind. And yet, outside the temple walls, our lives are often filled with endless noise, notifications, advertisements, chatter, and the constant hum of business. We say we want peace, but we surround ourselves with noise, both outside and inside. There's a teaching in this. If one bell can calm 1,000 wandering thoughts, do we really need more noise to feel alive? Or do we need fewer distractions, so we can truly hear what is already within us? I once visited a monastery, where they rang the bell every morning at 5 a.m. At first, I resisted it. I thought, why so early? Why disturb the silence? But over time, I realized something profound. The bell wasn't disturbing the silence, it was calling me back to silence. It was like a reminder, saying, return to yourself. Return to what matters. Our modern lives rarely give us such reminders. Instead, we are bombarded with noise that scatters our minds further and further. And yet, what if we treated our own lives like a temple? What if, instead of filling every moment with sound, we created space to listen for our own inner bell? The Buddha taught that mindfulness is like a bell, it awakens us, gently but powerfully, to the present moment. To live simply, then, is to remove the unnecessary noise so that we can truly hear this bell inside us. It's not about escaping sound altogether, but about choosing which sounds we allow into our hearts. So, here's a question: what noise can you let go of in your daily life, so you can hear your own bell more clearly? Is it the constant scrolling? The news running in the background? Or perhaps the endless inner voice that says you must always do more, have more, achieve more? A minimalist life is not silent, it's harmonious. Just like the temple, it may be filled with quiet footsteps, birdsong, or the strike of a bell, but none of it is excess. Each sound has meaning. Each moment is enough. As the bell rings, the monks return to their breath. And maybe you and I can too. We don't need more noise to feel alive. We need less. We need the sound of a single, clear bell to remind us, peace is already here. The bamboo and the house. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the simplest things last the longest? In many villages across Asia, people still build homes from bamboo. At first glance, these homes may look fragile compared to grand villas made of stone or concrete. But when the storms come, it's often the bamboo house that endures. Why is that? Bamboo, by its very nature, is hollow inside. It doesn't resist the wind with rigidity, it bends, it sways, it yields. And yet, after the storm passes, the bamboo still stands tall, while heavier, more stubborn structures may crack or even collapse. There's a deep lesson in this for our own lives. Many of us think security lies in accumulating more wealth, more possessions, more layers of protection. But sometimes, the very things we cling to become the weight that breaks us when hardship arrives. Like a mansion that feels indestructible, yet can crumble under the force of life's unexpected storms. I once heard a farmer say, "Bamboo survives not because it is strong, but because it knows how to be empty." That struck me as profoundly true. Emptiness, in this sense, is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the wisdom of not holding on too tightly, of knowing how to let things pass through without breaking us. Think about it, when challenges arise, loss, illness, disappointment, what makes us endure? Is it the sheer amount of possessions we have stored up? Or is it the lightness of a heart that doesn't cling too fiercely? The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment. The more tightly we hold, the more we suffer when life inevitably changes. But a person who lives simply, with fewer attachments, is like bamboo, flexible, grounded, and resilient. This doesn't mean we can't build a good life. But it does invite us to ask, are we building lives like rigid walls that crack, or like bamboo houses that adapt? Which foundation will truly carry us through the storms of existence? I once simplified my own space, letting go of things I thought I couldn't live without. To my surprise, I didn't feel smaller, I felt freer. And when difficult times came, I realized I wasn't weighed down by unnecessary burdens. I could bend without breaking. So perhaps real strength is not found in adding more, but in being light, like the bamboo, empty enough to be free, rooted enough to endure. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us, those who live with little attachment will stand firm through hardship. A bamboo house may be simple, but it outlasts storms. And a heart that lives simply may look ordinary, but it holds the quiet power to weather anything. The morning flower. Have you ever noticed how a single flower in your yard can completely change the tone of your day? Cherry blossom sometimes, it doesn't take a grand garden, or a bouquet of roses to lift your spirit. Just one simple blossom, standing quietly under the morning sun, is enough to remind you that beauty exists, that life is still offering you a gift. There is a famous story from the Buddha's life. One day, in front of his disciples, the Buddha simply held up a lotus flower. He didn't speak a word. Everyone was puzzled, waiting for an explanation, but one disciple, Markyapa, simply smiled. In that silent exchange, he understood. It was a transmission beyond words, the truth that life's deepest wisdom isn't always hidden in scriptures or long teachings, but sometimes in the pure presence of a single flower. Why was this moment so powerful? Because it shows us that peace, joy, and clarity are not things we need to collect in abundance. You don't need more possessions, more accomplishments, more recognition, to find happiness. Sometimes, it is enough to look deeply into just one thing, to really see it. That one flower, that one breath, that one moment can open the door to freedom. Think about it, how often do we overlook the small things because we are so busy chasing the big ones? We scroll past sunsets on our phone without pausing to watch the real one outside our window. We walk past gardens without seeing the flowers blooming at our feet. We wait for the weekend, the promotion, the vacation, always the next thing, while missing the miracle of the present moment. When the Buddha held up the lotus, he was pointing to this truth. Happiness isn't hidden somewhere in the future, it's right here, if we can truly see. A single flower contains the whole universe, the sun, the rain, the soil, the countless causes and conditions that allowed it to bloom. And in the same way, your life already contains more than enough to awaken joy, if you know how to look. I remember once walking in a busy city street. People were rushing to work, horns were blaring, everyone looked tense. And then, out of nowhere, I noticed a small patch of wildflowers growing through a crack in the pavement. For a moment, I just stopped and looked. The noise didn't disappear, the stress of the world didn't vanish, but my heart softened. That little flower was a reminder that beauty survives, even in chaos. So here's the invitation. Instead of asking, "What more do I need to be happy?" try asking, "What can I see more deeply today?" Can a cup of tea, savored without distraction, be enough? Can watching the way sunlight plays on your wall be enough? Can listening to a loved one with full presence be enough? The morning flower teaches us that simplicity is not emptiness. Simplicity is fullness, because when you give your whole attention to just one thing, that one thing reveals itself as infinite. So tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you let the day sweep you away, step outside. Find one flower, one leaf, one simple sign of life. Look at it as if it's the first and only flower you've ever seen. If you can do that, even for a few breaths, you may discover what the Buddha meant with his silent smile. Happiness isn't hidden in more. It's hidden in one flower, one moment, one true seeing. Cherry blossom. Conclusion: the heart of simple living. My friends, living simply does not mean living with less joy or less abundance. It doesn't mean deprivation, poverty, or denying yourself what you truly need. Rather, it is about choosing wisely, keeping what is essential, and letting go of what is excessive. It's about asking, does this thing, this habit, this desire, bring me closer to peace? Or does it quietly weigh me down? We live in a world where the message is constant: buy more, own more, achieve more. But the paradox is this: the more we pile up, the heavier we often feel. Our homes become cluttered, our minds restless, our hearts pulled in 1,000 directions. Simplicity is not about stripping life bare, but about clearing away the noise so that what truly matters can shine. The Buddha once said, "The one who knows contentment is the richest of all." Think about that. Richness, in the deepest sense, is not measured by how much we possess, but by how deeply we can appreciate what we already have. A wealthy person who never feels satisfied still lives in poverty. But a person who feels gratitude for even a simple meal, a safe shelter, a kind smile, that person is overflowing with abundance. Imagine your life as a bowl. If you keep filling it endlessly, it will overflow and cause a mess. But if you hold just enough, enough to nourish, enough to sustain, it feels light, balanced, and fulfilling. A simple clay bowl may not look like much, but if it holds what you need, it is perfect. Likewise, your life does not need to be ornate to be meaningful. I've seen this truth play out in real life. I once met an elderly couple who lived in a small, modest home. They had very little in terms of possessions, just a few clothes, some books, a small garden. And yet, when you stepped inside, you could feel the warmth, the peace, the sense of enough. They laughed easily, shared generously, and carried no burden of pretense. Meanwhile, I have also met people surrounded by luxury, yet haunted by stress, fear of loss, and endless dissatisfaction. Which life would you rather live? So I invite you to reflect. What can you release today? Not only in your closet or garage, but also in your heart. Can you let go of an old grudge, a restless craving, or the idea that you must always have more to be happy? Each time you let go, you make space for stillness, for gratitude, for freedom. Simplicity is not emptiness. Simplicity is spaciousness. When you empty the unnecessary, you allow your inner light to fill the room. So let your life be like a humble bowl, simple, uncluttered, yet full of nourishment. Empty of excess, yet radiant with peace. Not overflowing with things, but overflowing with joy. As you walk away from this reflection, remember, true wealth is not found in the store, the bank, or the next achievement. True wealth is already within you, in your breath, in your gratitude, in your ability to smile at this very moment. Live simply. Consume less. Rest more. And in doing so, may you discover the kind of richness no money can buy, the richness of a tranquil heart.